Well, good day to you. It is June the 1st. We are nearly halfway through the year, and I hope you're doing great wherever you are. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome everyone to Search for Signs. And as always, as I like to do, just take a quick moment and plug a few websites that really give you some good information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. First one's being the Share International site. Link is at the top, but there are other links and other websites and so forth that give you really good information about UFOs, UFO activity, crop circles, all sorts of stuff. So that's why I like to put it in there for whatever your interest is. You can look into it and learn more about this incredible topic in the same way that I did, by reading. Now, if you want to come back and join the discussion, feel free to do that. Post your questions in the comment section. Email me those questions at searchforsigns@mail.com if you'd rather do that. Or you can just let me know what you think. Post a comment in the comments section, or just scream it outside your window really loudly, and maybe I'll hear you screaming it, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I hope you guys are all doing well. All right, now, let's go through some of the posts in the comments here. So, 2 people said thank you. You guys are all welcome. You don't have to thank me for these videos. I love putting these videos up, and I also love the fact that people comment on it, such as you guys, so I really do appreciate it. RSI, this is a long comment, but I wanted to talk a little bit about this. Gary, thanks for the answer. Thanks for the information. So, Sai Baba is a spiritual regent that has come from another solar system, well-advanced cosmic avatar who died in 2011. Hope we will have a chance to meet him as Prima Baba. Not to be confused with a prima donna. I know, maybe he'll be very much of a prima donna, since his name kind of reminds me. I'm just kidding. Yeah, you said you've known about him for 35 years, or you know about him 35 years ago. I'm also awaiting the appearance of Maitreya and his healings because I have some issues with health, and he has awaited by many other people across the world in following his teachings. So in regards to your health issues, I do recommend using the image of the hand of Maitreya. I talk about it from time to time, the most incredible miracle out there, because it is something that you don't have to travel and go see personally yourself, like the crosses of light or something like that. You don't have to drink the healing waters to have their effect. You can just look at an image of the hand of Maitreya. But most people aren't talking about it, of course, because it's not a very well-known miracle. But if you want to know more about it, I've put some videos up. You can also go to the Share International site and listen to Benjamin Creme talk about how this miracle came about. But in the end, where it can help any one of us, not just you with physical problems, is you can look at the hand of Maitreya, the image, just the image of the hand of Maitreya. And according to Maitreya himself, this is the best way to get his attention, and the closest he can get to any one of us until he's out, known for who he is in the world. He's already out in the world, and he's already giving interviews, and has been giving interviews for some years now, not claiming to be who he is, probably not even looking like he normally would, and being missed by the vast majority of the people. Not everybody, but the vast majority of the people. So, I think when humanity is ready, when we've gone through all the stuff that we need to go through, that's when we'll start to look to his advice. Maybe not necessarily to him thinking that he is the one awaited by all the religions or any kind of world teacher or anything, but just listen to what he has to say. Because we have to go through some things first before we can get on the other side, I think. And the one thing in the main would be the economic crash that Maitreya himself predicted some years ago. And we've seen evidence of it going down and up and down and up, but it is going to crash at some point, and the bubble will burst, as Maitreya said. And all the corruption that's been going on behind the scenes will be on public display for sure. And then, of course, we'll listen to Maitreya. What do we do about this? Do we go after these people who have kept us, held us back for so long? And he'll say, forgive them. Not let bygones be bygones, but forgive them. They know not what they do. And just as Jesus spoke to the people 2,000 years ago, Maitreya and all these masters will be talking about forgiveness, about love, about the need to come together as one family and not to look for retribution like the Republicans are looking for in their own way right now with the conviction of Donald Trump. Totally, it's so funny that just a little side note, that they put Trump up on this pedestal. Most evangelical Christians do this, that he's next to Jesus and he's sent by God and all that kind of things. But in every aspect of this man's life, he is not living a Christian life. I'm sorry. And it comes out when he feels threatened. He just wants to attack everybody, which is not a Christian value at all. So, and every one of these masters will be teaching humanity true Christian values, which is love thy neighbor as thyself. Love those who persecute you, those kind of things. Things that make people blush today. The masters will show how important it is for every one of us to and what I mean by blush is people take that as a weakness when you forgive somebody, and it's all bluster that these people have. But at the end of the day, Maitreya is going to show that that's real strength. That's the real power, is in the love that we have for one another, So anyway, I digress. Anyway, so you always tried to follow the right path, justice, truth, etc. But sometimes, I'm getting back to this comment from this person, always tried to follow the right path, justice, truth, etc. But sometimes we do some mistakes. Of course, that's what makes us human. However, I hope to be still alive. Oh, and let me go back to that. You said you always try to follow the right path, justice, truth, etc. But sometimes we do some mistakes. I had not maybe that type of thinking, but, talking to the hand of Maitreya, mind you, about some of the things that I've been doing or not doing. And when I looked at the hand of Maitreya, I was in tears when I said this. And I said, this was years ago. And I said to him, I don't even consider myself a disciple because I'm not doing anything. And I felt really bad about it. And I was just kind of into my own stuff, you know what I mean? And not long after that, I saw Maitreya on the street, and one of the things that he said to me, he goes, I never judge anyone on whether they're good or bad. I only notice the good things that they do. Incredible, right? And when I started to apply that, not only take that from him to me, but try to use that with other people in my life that I have issues with, it's changed my life for sure. Am I perfect at it? Absolutely not. But I do recommend everybody to at least try it. Try noticing a couple good things in somebody that perhaps is giving you difficulties in your life, and see if that doesn't make you feel better about that person. They don't feel better about themselves towards you and all sorts of stuff. And as Jesus said, a tree is known by its fruit. And so the teaching that Maitreya has already given me personally, that I like to share with everybody on this channel, has definitely wielded some wonderful fruit in my own life, in the relationships I have with people, for sure. However, I hope to be still alive when Maitreya appears to the world to share and guide us to the right spiritual path. Wish you all the best. I wish you the best too. I follow your videos to find other new things about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. Greetings. Well, thank you very much for the kind words. The thing that people are looking for Maitreya, you know what I mean? And I'm guilty of this too. So I'm not saying this anything. And if you look for Maitreya, as Maitreya says, if you run after him, you've already lost him. It's best to take the teachings of the teacher, apply it to your life. And these teachings are already available to you, right? In terms of healing and health, Ben's master wrote an article, Health and Healing, Part 1 and Part 2. And in the Part 1, he talks about how disease of all kinds is caused by the belief that we're all separate from one another, and that it cuts us off from all sorts of healing that's all around us. And the reason why these masters know no disease, they don't know any disease anymore, is because they know no separation from one another, from themselves and the universe, from everything. And that's why they're so healthy. You know what I mean? And we have the problems that we have, all of us, because of the fact that at some level we still believe ourselves to be separate from everybody else. And Maitreya is coming to teach humanity the art of self-realization. He said he affirms that as his purpose. And we can't we can't experience the self when we're dying of hunger. We can't experience the self when we're being oppressed by tyrannies, such as the religious tyranny or the economic tyranny or the political tyranny that we have that's already in the world today, that's keeping humanity enthralled. You know what I mean? And the only way to really experience the self is with freedom. The only way to experience freedom is with justice, and that your needs are taken care of just like everybody else's needs are taken care of. And there wouldn't be anybody in the world who wouldn't have the right amount of food, clean drinking water, clothes, an adequate shelter to live in, and so forth, and also be educated to be a decent member of society. And we're entering into a period of time where we will be leaving behind all this, what we would consider to be the normal way of life. Everyone in it for themselves, competing against each other for resources, for more money, and so forth and so forth and so forth. And it's on an individual level, it's on a racial and group level, and it's also on a national and international level, this competition. The only thing that will cure humanity of competition from the top down is the principle of sharing. It will end competition in a very short time by just sharing the resources of the world. It will bring about trust. It will ease the tensions of these nations. That's why it's so important to look at this. When Maitreya is, it's not like any one of us now could convince our world leaders to do this, right? But the good thing about knowing this information now and not in the future, you can work through some of the questions that you might have. You can do your own research and see if there is any truth to this about the principle of sharing, bringing about justice. That's the most important thing that Maitreya is going to be talking about. Everything else is extraneous at this moment in time, you know what I mean? Nothing about the technology of light will work until humanity is sharing the resources of the world. We won't be able to travel to distant galaxies and different parts of our solar system and so forth in short time if we're not coming together as a humanity. We won't save our environment, until we bring about the principle of sharing. So everything in life that we have, that humanity is facing, problems and the opportunities and the adventures that await humanity, will not occur, will not take place, cannot take place until humanity starts to come together. And you can't just say you're coming together, you have to do something about it. And the only way to do it is to bring about the principle of sharing. Now, again, if you have any questions or things about the principle of sharing, I do recommend doing your own research and checking out the Marshall Plan, which happened right after World War II. And on the heels of talking about the principle of sharing, I typically bring this up because I want to keep telling everybody that there's evidence of already what Maitreya says is true, historical evidence of the principle of sharing working, bringing about justice, bringing about goodwill amongst the nations and so forth. And the Marshall Plan was an element of the principle of sharing because the United States gave excesses of resources to Western Europe to rebuild Western Europe after World War II. It happened. It rebuilt Western Europe. It created an economic boom in the United States. We now trust those nations better than we trust any other of those other nations. We have a more peaceful relationship with those nations than we have with any other nations on the planet. And we haven't attacked each other since then. You know what I mean? And if we could go back into not so distant past, some of those nations were they were at each other's throats. They were competing so hard against one another. Violence that there was perpetrated on each other from this other nation. And since we've started to share, not a single bit of it. Is it a perfect peace? No. And is it to say that the peace would last forever? I don't know. But over the last 70 or 80 years, it's been fine. Imagine the world, and this is the way I'll leave this whole conversation about the principle of sharing, right? Imagine what the world would have been like had the United States and the United Nations just done this with every nation at that time and continued to do it. We would be living in a totally different world today. There's no denying that we would be living in a different world. We would not have the tensions with North Korea. We would not have the tensions with the Middle East and so forth. We would have never had the war on terrorism. 9/11 would have never happened. It would have all been a remote, very, very remote possibility of those things happening because the principle of sharing would have already taken place. and we would probably not even have the environmental problem that we're having today. So anyway, but I appreciate the comment nonetheless. Thank you so much. Now, I did have a question I want to get into. Somebody asked, why do you believe in Maitreya? Well, I didn't believe this information the first time I heard it. Or actually, first time I read it. I'm sorry. When I just happened to stumble across Maitreya's Mission Volume 2, which was the second of 3 volumes of the Maitreya Mission books by Benjamin Creme. And I do recommend this book to read. It's a wonderful read. It gives you a lot of really good background information about Maitreya and the masters and some of the plans of Maitreya and so forth. But it was written in I want to say it was a compilation of question and answers to Share International and some of the discussions at the conferences that when he would give conferences in the Netherlands or San Francisco or whatever. But it's a wonderful read. But the first time I read that book, when I just discovered it at a bookstore, there was something about the name Maitreya. I remember I was like, I know I've heard that name before. Where have I heard that name? And I'm coming from a Christian background, so it wasn't like I was a Buddhist and I had heard that name Maitreya, Buddha. But I got it. It intrigued me enough that I picked the book up. And when I went home, I read a few pages of it and I hated it. And I was like, this is ridiculous, man. You know what I mean? Makes no sense. I thought just from the way that Ben answered some of these questions, he sounded really arrogant. And I was like, no, this ain't for me. And I put the book up. And I remember I even maybe read a few more pages after that to try to see if I liked it. And I was like, no, I don't like this. And I put the receipt back in the book. I was going to take the book back. And life begets life. And I started doing this and I got through that. And the book just sat on my kitchen counter for a while in my apartment at the time. And I kept looking at the receipt. Man, I need to take it back. But the bookstore was about 25 minutes away. And I was like, I'll do it tomorrow, that kind of thing. And then it got to the point where I was like, man, they're not going to ever take this book back. So I kept the book, right? Anyway. And then I picked it up. I think it was raining and there wasn't really good reception on the TV. I didn't have cable, and it was just kind of one of those things, or there wasn't anything on TV or something like that. And I just was sitting on my couch, and I started reading it, and I turned the page, and then I read some more, and I turned the page again, and I read some more, and read some more, and then I go back and read something again, and I go back. And I remember I probably read that book every day for hours, for months, maybe even a year or so. I mean, I could not put that book down. It was just the most fascinating. When I really started to see the truth in it, it really just opened my eyes up to everything. And like with everything, you have to continue to work on it. I couldn't just put the book down and, do this with my hands and then, say everything was fine, right? But, as time goes on, I started to learn more about this. I actually met Ben. Started to see that he wasn't as arrogant as I thought he was. He was actually quite humble, but very direct, and he had no problem pulling punches, and he'd never pulled punches, and in the way that he spoke, because he was always trying to help people, and he devoted his entire life to this information. The more I got to know Ben over the years, I saw a person who really served humanity. His whole life was service. And he would say that he was lazy. He used to say that all the time. He was like, if he's lazy, then I'm not doing anything. You know what I mean? But he was the most incredible person that I ever met in my life in that way, because he gave up so much for this for the world, to get this information out to the world, and he never stopped, even to the day he died. And I admire him for that. So there was an element of who he was that gave me a sense that there might be some truth to this. And he never wavered. He never, in the times that I saw him in private and so forth, and even when it was just the two of us, he never changed. And then he would go on stage and he would say what he had to say on stage, and then he would come right off, and then we'd go drive. And when he was in Atlanta, I would drive him around, and he would be the same Ben that he was up on stage. There was no pretense to him, none. He was the most honest person I've ever met. And the other thing, too, that I would say that really kind of drove it home for me in terms of the reality of this is I've had some really incredible Maitreya experiences over the years, and I share them on this channel, and you can listen to them on my playlist, my Maitreya experience playlist, if you so choose, but I don't see myself as being extraordinary in that way because there's a lot of other people who have had those same experiences. Some of the people I know personally, I've seen them, I've met them, and I've seen the look on their face when they've met Maitreya and how it's affected them. And then I also read about them in the Shared International magazines. And some of those stories, even though I wasn't even there, I didn't know the person, I didn't, just reading what Maitreya said to them changed my life too in some things. But the two experiences that I would say that just really are just, I can't, even three, actually the payphone message would be the first one, I guess. But the second one was when I wanted my family to, for some reason, I was going to, let me go back. This was in 2009, excuse me. I was driving up to my brother's house in Charlotte, and I was going to spend the weekend for the 4th of July with my family. And on the way up there, I was perhaps listening to Ben talk about UFOs on my phone, on the internet or something like this, or a tape or something, or I had just been thinking about it. I can't remember why I thought this. Doesn't really matter. But anyway, halfway between Atlanta and Charlotte, I said to Maitreya, mentally, I don't speak to him telepathically, like Ben did, but I just thought to myself, like kind of thinking to Maitreya in my head, Maitreya, is there any way that you could ask the Space Brothers to show up for my family? That was the question that I asked. And then about a minute or so after, I was kind of embarrassed that I would ask such a question of Maitreya that I said, no, forget it. I forget what I said, right? And I drove the rest of the trip, and I got up there the day before the 4th of July, and everything's fine how it is. I didn't think anything of the request that I had just made of Maitreya and the retraction of that request. And on the 4th of July, we were about to go outside and shoot some fireworks in front of my brother's house. We're all standing in this street. He lives in a really nice neighborhood on the outskirts of Charlotte. And you can't shoot huge fireworks off. It's against the law in North Carolina. So we were shooting these little itty bitty little things that would go up about 5 or 10 feet and bzzz, and little Twizzlers or sparklers. I'm not Twizzlers, sparklers or whatever we would shoot off and that kind of, or hold in our hand or whatever. So we weren't shooting off big time fireworks. Anywho, my brother's neighbor, who I've never met this person before in my life, never seen him since then, in front of probably 15 to 20 people, half of them being kids under the age of 12. Okay. Looks up at the sky and goes, "What the fuck is that?" Just like that. And I look up, and I take that back. And my nephew goes, "Oh my gosh, Daddy, that's a UFO." And my nephew he's in his 20s now, but he was really young then. And I remember I didn't look up yet, and I closed my eyes and I was shaking my head and I said, "There's no fucking way. There's no way that Maitreya just had this thing show up for my family." I just asked him about it, and I didn't tell anybody in my family this. This is all going through me internally in my head, right? I just asked him, and I still hadn't looked up yet to see what it looked like. I was in disbelief that it happened. How could this have happened when I asked Maitreya in my mind for this, right? And then I looked up, and there is this huge UFO above my brother's house. It looked like a flame. It was in the shape of a candle flame. And it was silent, and it was moving very slowly, and it was as red as a traffic light. And in the center was this perfect circle, this white circle. And my brother's neighbor goes, "Oh my God, Ron, that is a UFO." And James said the same thing. And my brother looks at James and he goes, "There's no such thing as UFOs. That's just a plane with its light out or something." My brother just pushed it aside. And then my nephew said, "Yeah, you're right. There's no such thing as UFOs." And my brother's neighbor's like, "Ron, that's a UFO, man. I don't know what you're talking about." My brother, "Nah, that's not a UFO." And then I went around the house and to kind of get a better look at it. I was asking my mother, who was sitting on the porch, and she never bothered to get up off her seat for it. I was like, "You got to see this, Mom." And she never got off. And now she regrets never seeing it. But it went over my brother's house toward the golf course behind his house. and the flame disappeared, and then it was just that white circle, and then it just disappeared. But it was totally silent, and it was moving very, very slow and deliberate over my brother's house. But that was just something that was, for me at the time, was almost unbelievable. I just couldn't believe it that it happened. And then the other thing that I talk about, from time to time, is the time that I was cleaning a building. It was actually the same year. It was in 2009. Yeah, it was. But this was towards Christmas of 2009. I was going through another low point in my life. I have these from time to time, like everybody else, I guess. But I had 2 jobs and then another job, so I actually had 3 jobs, for those keeping count. One was a cleaning job, and I was cleaning this building that was kind of semi-secure on this regional airport. It wasn't on the big one that everyone flies into Atlanta. This was a regional one. And I was having a hard time getting trash out of this side of the building. And I asked Maitreya one night if there was anybody that could help me with the trash. Now, to get the whole background of the story, you have to listen to that. I don't want to go too long into it because it's kind of a long story. But anyway, not long after that, the side of the building that had a lot of trash that was causing me to stay there for an extra 15, 20 minutes, sometimes in the wee hours of the morning, and I was just trying to get there, clean it, and go home, because I had to get up early in the morning for my first job, was gone. There was no trash. Now, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think that Maitreya had made it disappear or anything like that. And I certainly didn't know what had really happened. But I just thought that these people were not there that day. And then the next day, the same thing. And then the next day, the same. It happened for 5 days. And it just got me over the hump. And I was like, oh, man, that was nice. So I thought that these people in this building were out for the week or doing something else. And but everything else in the building had to be cleaned. I still had to get trash out of the other parts of the building. I still had to clean the bathrooms and all that kind of stuff, and vacuum and all that stuff. But that trash, did not have to worry about it. But like I said, it just made all the difference. And I would say it was about a month or 2 after that. Maybe not. Maybe a month or so after that. I ran into a lady who was coming out of that building. She was the manager. She was the general manager of that side of the building. And she just said to me, Gary, she just said casually, she said, Gary, just, don't lock the door, because the doors were locked. Like I said, it's a semi-secure facility. Don't close the door because the door's locked. And she said, I left my key in my my desk, and I just need to use the restroom. I'll go right back in. I said, no problem. And then she said something. She goes, well, make sure you tell your associate not to do that too, not to close the door. And I'm like, what associate? And she goes, the guy that helps you clean from time to time. I said, there's nobody that helps me clean from time to time. What are you talking about? And her face dropped because she goes, there's a guy that comes in here, because she was more concerned that there was somebody coming in there that wasn't supposed to be in there, mind you, right? But her face dropped, the blood just left her face was white, and she was like, there's somebody that comes in and helps you. And she mentioned, and I said, when did this happen? And she mentioned the week that there was no trash. She said back in December, first, second week, or whatever it was. And I said, what did he do? And she goes, I said, first of all, what did he look like? She said, he's a tall black fella, very polite, looked like he was in his 60s, and came and got the trash and left. And she said, it was very nice, Anyway, come to find out that was Maitreya who was getting the trash for me. I never saw Maitreya. So I couldn't have put it in my mind and, whatever like that. She saw him. She had no idea about this information, as far as I know. And the other thing, too, the cherry on the top of that whole story was when I wanted to tell the story on this channel, I could not remember Carol's name. And I asked the hand of Maitreya. This is why I always tell people to look at the hand of Maitreya, to ask him for help. You can ask him for anything, Maitreya says. And he'll do whatever he can within karmic limits to help you. So I asked him, I said, Maitreya, I would love to tell this story on this channel, but it would make more of an impact if I knew this woman's name and not just some woman. Well, the next day she came into my job. I haven't seen this woman in years, right? So the next day she came into my job, and I was like, oh my God, I know you, right? And I said, what is your name? And she goes, it's Carol. And she's kind of looking at me like, why am I so excited to see her? And then when I reminded her that I was the guy that was cleaning the building, she was like, oh, but she still doesn't know why I was so excited. I was so excited because I had just asked Maitreya for help in remembering her name, and the next day she comes into where I work. So that's the reason why, and more than that, but that's the reason why I believe in the story and the information about Maitreya the way that I do. I love you guys. You guys take care. Enjoy the day. Sorry I went a little long. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Take care. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.